with a nice, simple little program called the Moccasin Identifier.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
You're watching Rogers TV.
This is a man's heart, a heart in desperate need of medical attention. But because 78% of Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, he may not get the help he needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
You're watching Rogers TV. The following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the NB Polypod. I'm so thrilled to be back here with everyone after a long campaign. And I'm here tonight on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, the Wolastoqey, and the Pescatawamacati people. And I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Brian Harris.
Woo! What's up, everybody? We are back. Joe, it's we're long overdue to have you back with us.
It feels like home again. I'm so glad to be back here, honestly.
Yeah, Rogers TV just would not allow extra candidate attention that you would have brought to the pod, even though I'm sure you could have maintained a level of professional, unbiased approach. But
given like our other co-host here,
yes.
Beatrix, I think it was good that I got to have a little break from this side of it. I'm so appreciative of Shawn, Rouse for taking the reins, and you all did an amazing job. It was a great fun to listen to. I had a lot of fun. It was burning at both ends here. Shawn and I were doing pods at 10 o'clock at night, and we had folks on, and we are going to be back with Shawn Rouse. Welcome back, Shawn. Oh, Shawn, you are muted, sir.
Thank you.
There we go.
There we are.
When you started to introduce your lovely co-host, I didn't think you were going to go to Brent. I thought you were going to go to Beatrix. I'll be honest.
and you would be right.
If you're watching on Rogers, Joanna's holding her right now.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly.
The little baby. And we are not alone. We have a fourth guest who was on just as the writ dropped. We are joined once again with Teri McMackin. Hey, Teri.
Hello.
Hello.
So we got the NB Polypod. We now have like a caucus. We now have like an NB Poly.
I like it.
The panel, the power panel, whatever you want to call us. We got to come up with like some New Brunswick version. The power panel.
Well, the caucus is good. When I was literally giving birth, the nurse was like talking about the caucus, which was like her group of nurses and doctors who were there that day. And we're like,
okay.
Do you know who we are? Like, that is so weird that you're saying that.
On point.
She's like, no, it was completely random. But we're like, yeah, that's crazy. You're calling it the caucus.
Okay, so the NB Poly caucus, we can call ourselves that confidently.
Yeah,
we are gonna have a fun chat tonight, guys, because we've been building to this for 2 years, ever since we started the NB Poly podcast. We've had tons of guests. We've had, Shawn, you've been on over a dozen times now. Teri, we brought you on because we wanted to get you on before, and then we brought you on, and then you came out as a candidate. Right. Joe, you were a candidate. We got stories from the trenches. We've got despondent people like myself. We've got excited, hopeful people. We've got winners, losers. We've got it all to talk about on the podcast today, which is exciting. And thank you all for joining us. I think we got to start with a little. We're going to rewind and we're going to go back in time. Many of you listening to this podcast would remember that Shawn and I went through riding by riding, 1 through 49. We did the full loop around the province, and we predicted some outcomes. For better or for worse.
We did it all right, but we tried our best.
Well, for those, just to catch people up, those numbers that were predicted was Shawn predicted 32 seats for the Liberals, 3 for the Greens, and 14 for the Progressive Conservatives. I predicted 25 for the Liberals, 8 for the Greens, and 16 for the Progressive Conservatives. And the winner, as the numbers tell us, with 31 to the Liberals, 2 for the Greens, and 16 for the PCs, has to be you, Mr. Shawn Rouse. So a tip of my old Stephen Colbert hat to you for, just about nailing it.
Totals only. There's a lot of toss-up races that I didn't call correctly, but we can get into those. Yeah,
why don't we start there? Which ones did you? I mean, because obviously my numbers suggested there was going to be a real tack to the Green breakthrough. I was predicting an incredibly weak Liberal brand. I was predicting a collapse of the Conservatives. Yes, which I got that number right, but I really didn't think we were going to see the Liberal landslide that we did. And you more or less, like you said, you got that number very close. But what were those toss-up ridings that went differently than you were expecting?
So just looking through from Restigouche, East, West, Belle Bay, Belledune, Bathurst, Hauteur, Nipisiguit, Caracat, Shippagan, Les Îles, and Tracadie. I think we all called those the same. I think I called Regent, Savoie, in Miramichi Bay, Negawak, and Sam Johnson took that seat. I believe I called I can't remember who I called for Miramichi East, actually. But I don't think you called Michelle Conroy. You called Veronique. I do remember that one. I was pretty sure. I think you're right.
It was a toss-up, though. You were saying it's going to be tight because I actually thought it was Veronique easily. I didn't think Michelle was going to have.
She's got some big fans,
I see it here. You're right. What is it with Michelle Conroy? She's got some sort of magic in that riding. She beat Kevin Vickers.
I know.
Beat the Liberal wave.
Maybe she'll come on the podcast.
Yeah,
I want to know.
3 PANB people. She must have some magic happening in that riding.
That's true. I mean, if ever there was a candidate who has not just killed a dragon, but then survived a deeply unpopular leader, that's almost a trifecta,
PANB has survived this election. Chris Austin won handily as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Just running through Pat. I believe we all called Kevin Arsenault. I think we're all the fans of Kevin Arsenault are a little heartbroken. He didn't win. That right. Went to Liberal Pat Finnegan.
Which we did know was going to be a tight race. We did know.
We called it a toss-up. So.
But his riding was redrawn, right?
A touch.
And that was part of the. Okay.
Yeah, there was a touch of a redraw. Yeah.
So
but yes, ultimately devastating.
As we're going through these, maybe we can, we skipped over, we went through a bunch fast, but there's probably a little more we could talk about for each of these as we go through. So.
Yeah, because Teri has some extra insight on, your corner of the province as well. So that'd be interesting to get your take there.
The next,
because we were kind of, I remember going through this with you. I think I got to be in on this first piece with you too, and we were unsure of some of the Moncton realities and whatnots.
Yeah.
Oof.
Oh, is that Beatrix sneezing?
Yeah, she's sneezing.
That's so funny. I love it when babies sneeze. It's so
and they're
funny.
So confused about it too.
I know.
What just happened? I don't know.
They just have this wind down sound to them.
She's fully awake and just hanging out here. So keep talking, everybody.
I'm going to put up a screen, but only for a second, just so we can resort to it. I want to have it on standby. I want to have the electoral results map. And so I'm just going to share that real quick. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
I know it's tiny. I'm going to zoom in so that we can actually see it, and then we can look at some percentages, and we can do whatever we want to do from here. But yes, you're just talking about Finnegan there. Wrong riding. It's Kent North. There we are. Pat Finnegan edging out Kevin Arsenault by just about 700 votes. It's not nothing because Kevin won this riding with 46% of the popular vote last time. He's beat two Liberals to do it, and the Carl Crosby, the Progressive Conservative, a distant third with 16%. Barely getting the mandatory 15% to get your money back on the riding. Where else are we going to, Shawn? I can hop around if we want.
So the next riding is Beausoleil Grand Boctouche Kent. So that was face off against Benoit Bourque and Bastarache, and Benoit Bourque crushed Anne with almost 5,800 votes to 1,759. That was the next go. And the green was right behind the PC there, but huge win for Benoit Bourque, obviously.
Yes.
I'll mention too, I think Bernadette, it was her first time running.
Yes, that's true.
If I remember right, and she was so sweet, and she was nervous, but she was excited. She was all ready to go in. So I'm very happy she got that result. And Bernadette, you should be proud.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Listen, there was a lot of green candidates that we thought were going to be, there was some former second place finishers, that we thought were going to be right there, edging out the Conservatives, nipping at the heels of the Liberals, if not passing them, number of them. And that didn't happen. So, it was a real surprise for sure. So in this election where it seemed like people were really stampeding to the Liberals so that they could get rid of Higgs,
Panic at the ballot box.
You're right. Bernadette did well to get that result.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great support there. So then we go to Shediac Bay Dieppe. So Robert Gauvin, again, big win over former Liberal leadership contestant Rene S. I hope I don't get his name too wrong. Espinot.
You're talking about Shediac Bay Dieppe, sorry. I'm in the wrong spot. Yeah, Renee Efestian, yes. And Chantal Landry, who ran last time in a slightly different riding. Yep.
That's right. Yeah, but huge win for Robert Gauvin.
Yeah, very big
turnout there.
Can we agree that Robert Gauvin's probably going to be the deputy leader of the Liberals? Do you think that's where he's going to end up?
Oh, I think so. I mean, he is.
He was big on her leadership campaign. He ran himself, but
he was. Yeah. I think Robert is. I'd say he's the unofficial number 2 in charge. If he's not the deputy leader, he is the beating heart of that party, right behind Susan. Just a very affable guy. Gets to know everybody on a first name basis with everyone. Talks to everybody. Just a bon vivant kind of guy who's a hard worker and in all heart and wears it on his sleeve. So I don't know anyone who dislikes Robert Gauvin.
Yeah, it's true.
No, and he's seen both sides, right, of the whole schmozzle that is the legislature.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could call Robert Gauvin the original Higgs rebel.
Absolutely. Now he will remember he ran in Ship again for the PCs and won, and abandoned the party after Higgs tried to close down the emergency room up there. And his father had actually run for the PCs in that riding before him. So he walked away from that PC brand altogether, probably due to Blaine Higgs.
Yeah, in no small part. Okay, before we get into like the open debrief of the election, what else do you want to jump to here, Shawn?
So if we keep going down the coast, Jacques Leblanc, again, I feel like I'm not giving enough credit to these Liberals, the big Liberal wins in the north, and these incumbent Liberal MLAs who won by huge margins. But it just goes to show they're very popular in their ridings. So Gilles Lepage, Guy Arsenault, Marco Leblanc, René Legacy, Luc Robichaud, former mayor of Pacaville, Isabelle Theriault, Eric Mellette, Keith Chasson, Sam. We talked about Sam Johnson, but those first 8, I mean, huge wins for those folks. And again, Benoit Bourque and Robert Gauvin, Jacques Leblanc, huge wins, very popular MLAs in their riding and well supported and won by large margins in every case.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I'm looking at Eric Mellette. You're talking about Mallet. Wilfred Roussel was no slouch of a Green candidate, right? He's a former Liberal cabinet minister. The Liberals took, a couple of Greens from us, and a couple of Greens in the Green Party, and took people like Luke in Fredericton, and we went, the Greens went right in there and grabbed Wilfred, and I thought that was just such a play that I thought might pay a little more dividend for them. I mean, they got a second place finish in that riding. That's important, right? But not really a competitive one. I'll show you the one I think I'm. Teri, we gotta talk about yours. Tim Tam herself beat Bruce Northrup, and I think everybody got that wrong. I think we really thought that Tammy was going to collapse. And then when we found out you were running, we thought, man, there could be a real like Bruce Teri kind of battle here, since you've had, positions before. And we certainly gave the edge to Bruce here.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. But my goodness, like Tammy really held on to a lot of votes that we just were not expecting her to keep. Any thoughts on that? Not to like zero in on your riding here, but I think we were all surprised because Tammy was, sort of the center of some intrigue and controversy for the last few months that I thought, oh, wow, that really sealed the deal there for them, right? But
I think, of course, I'm especially interested in this riding for a number of reasons, but I heard a lot at the door, and more than I was surprised, actually, that it bothered people that Bruce went from conservative to liberal. And then I've met Bruce, and Bruce is a fantastic human. I really, really like him. And I would just be like, well, why does that bother you so much? Like, you stood up for your hospital. Like, doesn't that count for something? And it didn't seem to count for as much as I would have thought. Yeah. Right? Like, here's this man who stood up for what was right. He had these like real convictions, and he was being punished for it simply because he changed parties. And then you're really starting to see how the party politics, just taints how people want to vote, right? They're like, well, I liked Bruce, and if he was running conservative, I would have voted for him. And I'm like, really? So I found like I learned a lot at the door, and I had a lot of people tell me as well that they wanted to vote for me, but they were scared of splitting the vote, which, I mean, maybe you can make an argument because Bruce and I together, we had more votes than
a lot more.
Tammy.
Yeah.
But I also believe that people, the over 1,200 people who voted for me were voting for the message that I was sharing, right? That there is a viable third option. And one of the things I really like to push at the door, because people are like, well, why bother voting Green? They're not going to form government. And I'm like, no, but the cool thing about being a Green is that if the Conservatives put forth a good idea, I can support that. If the Liberals put forth a good idea, I can support that too. So my pitch was a lot of, it doesn't really matter who forms government. If you get me in there, I'm going to get the best ideas. Of both. Exactly. Like so often we lose track of these great ideas because they're wearing the wrong colored t-shirt. And I often give the example, having worked for nonprofits my whole life, that I've applied for a lot of government funding. And anytime there is a change of government, let's say something as simple as the Community Investment Fund, which I've applied for a million times for all different things. What's going to happen, and I'm calling this, it's on the record, the Liberals are going to change the name of the fund, keep it basically exactly the same, spend all of this money on the bureaucracy to make it their own when the idea itself was fine, Like, why can't we give credit where credit is due instead of trying to change things to match whatever color we happen to be wearing at the time? And I feel like that example, even though it was a little technical for some people, they kind of understood it.
Yeah.
Like, they understood the value of just, let's do what needs to be done. Like, some things don't need to be that partisan.
Grandiose.
And I'll usually ask them, I'll usually ask them, like, have you ever seen, an idea that the Conservatives put forward, and even though it's a good idea, the Liberals are just on principle opposing it? I'm like, why do you have to oppose it if the idea is good? Is it because it doesn't come from you? And that seems to be getting in the way of people. But I truthfully thought Bruce was going to come out on top, and that, I might be a second place, because you're right, there was a lot of controversy, but that didn't seem to matter as much to people at the doors. But they would say things like, I haven't been able to get a meeting with her, or she doesn't call me back, or, they would say all of these things. And I'm like, okay, people are busy. I get that. But if that's a bother to you, why are you still putting your vote there? But some people are just so stuck in their vote. Like, I had people tell me either, I don't like Bruce, but I'm voting Liberal, and I don't like Tammy, but I'm voting Conservative. And it seems like they just completely disregarded the fact that there was a person, a candidate with their own, values and morals, and that they could be voting for. So it was a lot of partisanship. And where I was municipal, I didn't see that partisanship when I was running. And it was a completely different ball game provincially.
Mark Rouleau spoke to some of that in his final send-off kind of thing, where he was very shocked about the Kathy Baucus win, because at the door he heard a lot about, she doesn't call me back, like, she's not representing us. It was really frustrating to him. And it sounds similar to your situation, where it's like, but even still, they're Conservative, and that is what's happening, and they're going there, and it doesn't really truly matter that this has happened. Like, it's just, they can't go to the other team.
Well, I'll say this, Teri, and I'm going to have a lot to say about this split the vote bull crap later at some point. But you absolutely kept the Conservatives in play here. If you hadn't have been on the ballot, Bruce would have won. And I am not like a lot of people who have been commenting about that, saying, oh, the Greens are just splitting the vote, we're going to end up with Higgs. It's like, no, the Conservatives were doomed to lose bad in this election. And we've been talking about it on this pod. And Shawn, you agreed, like, that's where Shawn, you and I disagreed on some of the seat count pieces, but we both agreed there's going to be a serious retribution by the electorate. And there was, even though the polls didn't show it until the last week, even then it wasn't right on the money. And, I still think this is a valuable outcome, right? The idea that
55% didn't vote in my riding, 55% did not vote for Tammy. They voted for an alternative, and that gives her a mandate that she didn't have. 44.8%, like, sure, that's great, but that's still less than half of the people actually voted for you. So that means she's going to have to start listening, or she's going to have to start moderating whatever it is that she's doing to please these people, because they can go elsewhere. You wish
that would be the ethical.
No, I wish that would be the thing that would make sense, right?
That's the ethical, moral approach. Be like, wow, I ran on this, but nobody actually voted for it on majority. Yep. So I really should change my behavior so that I represent my constituency. Except that's never what we see, unfortunately, in this sort of first past the post system. I don't know. Before we move on, Shawn, is any comments? Because I know we've been jabbing away here.
On Sussex, having grown up there is a strong PC brand affinity there. Bruce benefited from it before, and Tammy benefited from it this time. And I think there's a very strong support for Teri there, absolutely. And
and Bruce isn't reoffering. I think that's something that people need to understand, that next time around, Bruce isn't going to be that. He's a star candidate, right? He's not reoffering. So are those people who said they really wanted to vote for me, but voted for Bruce instead, are they going to vote for me? I don't know, but I'm a little biased. But watch this riding in 4 years, because I think it's going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to talk about some of these vote splits. And my major wish for this, I did support Susan as part of this campaign. I wanted to see Blaine Higgs go. I didn't want to see any vote splits that would create the possibility of Blaine staying. And we saw some of those vote splits happening, and it did come close and to making a difference. It still had the result that I wanted, and I was grateful for that. And I'm all for let's have all the candidates just throw themselves out there and let the chips fall. Again, I really wanted to see Higgs go down just because I had a personal his policies affected me in a personal way and my family in a personal way that I really needed to see him go, and I was glad to see the public felt the same way. And I said to Laura Myers, Laura, you're great. I love you. You're a wonderful lady. If you split the vote and Faytine wins, that's going to break my heart, because that's not the result I would want to see in that.
Yeah.
Such a hard riding to watch. Yeah. I agree with you, Shawn. That was the hardest thing, because on principle, absolutely, I'd vote for Laura. But it's just like, Faytine wasn't just a normal conservative. Like, I think Tammy, she'll do okay. Like, it's fine. Everything's fine. The world's not ending because Tammy got in. But if Faytine had gotten in,
I know,
that would be a completely different story.
It's such an endorsement of a very version of American-styled evangelical politics and Christian nationalism.
But still 3,000 New Brunswickers.
I was going to say, she still had so many votes.
Yeah, but but it's dead now. Like, this is what I can say. Like, she has now tried on three different occasions to get a breakthrough, and she's failed. Yeah. Maybe she has the gumption to try a fourth time, but three strikes, you're out. And even
I think she will. I think she'll try again.
I think she might, but I this was her best chance. Anyway, we can go there next. Let's look at that next while we're right here. Let's go down to the Hampton Funday St. Martin's riding. John Arone, former Progressive Conservative Member of Parliament, getting 39.3% of the vote. Faytine Grasecci getting 3,035 votes, 36. And Laura Myers getting that magic 15 points plus. She got 18.7% of the vote at 1,500. And then you got this was a full slate. You had every party except the Consensus Party, which I only found about. This is where they stuck old Mama Bear Barb Dempsey, who is a complete problem.
Oh wow, Barb Dempsey! I didn't know she was running. That's
yeah. No support, right?
120 people knew she was running.
And Peter Graham, and look, Libertarian Party, Keith Tays, this guy and I have been chatting. People are chirping me about it. Listen, if you want to talk libertarian philosophy if you want to talk, listen, if you want to talk about Stein, if you want to talk about Ayn Rand, if you want to talk about the Christian anarchy, sorry, you want to talk about anarchy and the philosophical underpinnings of libertarianism, that's great. But unfortunately, the Libertarian Party didn't look like a philosophical libertarian party. It looked like a conspiracy party. It looked like a hate the digital ID. There's the turning the frogs gay. All this stuff. Like, I just don't have any patience for it. And Keith, if you want to come on the pod, it's not even
libertarian. It's like, if you're going to say you're a libertarian party, at least be libertarian. But anyone who went and started looking into them, like, it was wild. Absolutely.
If you want to talk about Noam Chomsky and Nelson Mandela and these social libertarians, or Ayn Rand and these very more individual libertarians and more right libertarian, that's fine. But this isn't even any of that. This is a helter-skelter mess. So anyway, we're done talking libertarians. But this is one of those rare ridings where everybody showed up. And we got John Harone as the candidate there.
I think it's important to mention too, like, a lot of people were worried about vote splitting, but even in that riding, there were still 1,500 people who put their trust in Laura. She must have killed it to get that kind of
that
vote.
Sister was out way before anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, even more than Faytine.
Yes.
So if Faytine doesn't come back and it's John and Laura, I think Laura could take it.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, this was another one where it's like the fear of what could possibly happen really took over the entire vibe of that particular riding, right? Like there was just so much fear of Fateen. Like there was prominent people out there saying, you know, a vote for Green is a vote for Fateen. Like that.
Jason Sully, you frigger.
Oh, it's like, no, a vote for whoever you vote for is a vote for that person. Period.
Yeah.
Period. But if you don't vote, then you voted indirectly for the person who won. That is how I feel.
Like I said, I had a personal interest in seeing some of these people who had campaigned in favor of Higgs's anti-trans policy go down, and this is one I was worried about. Fateen played a huge part in supporting the premier and rallying support for him and rallying members to prevent his leadership review, which he richly deserved.
Yes.
And love Laura. She's the sweetest woman in the world. She's great. She's intelligent and capable. In this case, I really wish there could have been an agreement between the two parties not to split the vote and make it so close there. But thank God it turned out the way it did, because
I know.
we'd be
and
having
you know
a
what?
different conversation today if it
to
didn't.
John Harone's credit, he's a fine legislator.
Yes.
Like
Absolutely.
the Liberals did not elect a lot of who I would call competent, capable, experienced legislators. John Harone's one of them. Robert Govan's one of them. Susan Holt's probably one of them, but actually probably doesn't have the policy chops to the extent that Govan and John Harone actually do. Like they bring some serious institutional and bipartisan knowledge set to that party. And that's a great asset to have. It can't be understated. Anyway, okay, on to the next.
All right. So we've got to talk, while we're here, we got to talk about 28. Riding 28, which is the Quispamsis riding.
What do you mean?
Wow.
What happened there?
What happened there?
Listen, I mean, this is the icing on the cake for everybody. If you're a conservative listening to this podcast, and I think I can count on one hand the number of them that there are. I met with one of them tonight, Mr. Mark. It was great to meet you. This is the best gift that we could give you as the New Brunswick electorate. Your party was heading toward a cliff, and it had forgotten a ton of its roots, and there was one person responsible for it. And I think Ross Wetmore said it best. And I know, Teri, you've spoken about Ross on this, pod before, and how, it was such an egregious act that something that Ross fought for so long as a conservative member of the legislature around the clinic. I'll let you tell that story. But here we have the premier himself losing his seat, which is very uncommon. Uncommon historically. But I think it just goes to show.
Absolutely. I mean, so Aaron Kennedy ran a really strong campaign, and it was a direct rebuke from the people in Quispamsis, Blaine Higgs and his policies. They wanted to send a direct message that even if no matter what happens, and Blaine has had support for 14 years in this riding. It's not like he was a flash in the pan kind of guy.
No.
He's been here a long time. People wanted to see a change. They didn't agree with his leadership, and it was close, but they sent a message.
Agreed.
I was really amazed at how the town council came out in such vibrant support of Aaron Kennedy. Like that was a major risk because we hear it all the time. Like you have to be so careful about infuriating the powers that be. Like all municipalities are at the whim of the province. So to be so in the face of Blaine by supporting Aaron, I thought that was a calculated risk the mayor and council took. Majorly.
It was something else because, just a few weeks before that at our council, Joe, there was a motion brought by Councillor Norton, basically, and, we're not going to argue the quality of that motion or anything on this, but just to say, just the juxtaposition, there was a motion brought by a councillor to basically say, if you're going to run as an elected official, as a municipal councillor, or as a staff person in the city of St. John, you have to basically not resign, but you have to step down on an unpaid leave of absence to do so. That was a motion that was brought to City Hall of St. John, and it hasn't passed final, or maybe it has passed final reading.
No, it still needs to come back again.
Right, yeah, it hasn't come back yet. So, here's the mayor endorsing Aaron Kennedy. Here is the council, not all council, but I think members of the council endorsing Aaron Kennedy. Aaron Kennedy, was able to, keep his job and run as a candidate. I mean, obviously he took a leave of some sort to do so, but there wasn't this big, okay, here's your checklist of things you have to do now that you've decided to be politically active as a, staff person of the town of Quispamsis. So, quite a juxtaposition.
Absolutely. And there was actually a rule that they implemented in Quispamsis that said you cannot be in any way on the town payroll. They couldn't even take his vacation time to run as a candidate, which they ended up, that was passed in 2018 after Aaron Kennedy's first run in the riding. And he brought it back up, or it was brought back up by councillors who supported Aaron to say, why are we dictating what these people can do on their vacation time? If they want to run for council, that's fine. Let them. I agree. Let them run for the province, run for whatever. It's their vacation time. It's not something we should have a say in.
That draws attention too to the fact that people don't realize how much a candidate has to sacrifice to even run. So I know you folks being elected municipally, obviously that's a whole different thing, but I'm self-employed. I'm a freelancer. I don't have vacation days. I don't have sick days. If I don't do the job, I just don't get paid for it. So no one was telling me I couldn't run. I did let my clients know just out of courtesy. I'm like, if this is a problem with you, we'll pause or whatever. That's not a problem. And of course, no one had an issue with it. But while I was campaigning, I was also working. I also had, kids in hockey. I also had all these things. I'm not retired. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an independently wealthy business owner. I am an average person that I think people really relate it to that at the door, especially if they had kids and I started talking about kids or saying oh, I do the breakfast program at the school. The kids call me the waffle lady. Anyways, people loved that story because they could relate to it. They could see me, either coaching their kids, or that's just a season of life that I'm in. But I mean, any other candidate making these personal connections, I don't know about you, but I can't relate to a lawyer or a CEO or, I'm I'm still paying my student loan. I graduated in 2013. Don't talk to me.
That makes one of us. I've been on repayment assistance for 6 years, so I can't even afford to pay my student loans. But anyway,
but just I feel like that's something people just need to know and need to appreciate. Whoever's knocking on your door, they're probably taking unpaid time to do this, absolutely. And they're not being paid to do it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So, Mr. Blaine is gone.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. First of all, the venue choice of St. Louis Bar and Grill is gone.
Yeah, for the premiere, I thought it'd be a hotel or something.
Or at least a local business, maybe, or I don't know if you're going to choose a restaurant bizarre. My son happened to be there with his dad and his paternal grandparents just before this was all happening, and he said to me, he's like, I didn't like his signs, Mom. I'm like, I know, it's true. Wasn't great. But he was, I guess, really trying to get out of there too at the end, clamoring to avoid CBC and was really delaying talking to them. I love that Hadil Ibrahim was the reporter from CBC because she did all of the 713 articles along the way. So
just a jab, such a light-handed. Well, that's Adil's the one in the neighborhood. It's just
oh yeah, it felt like just sweet karma or something to watch her get to kind of interview him at his worst moment. So.
Yeah, I can't say I was disappointed by that. Or when Steve Outhouse started to talk, and 12 seconds later they cut away to go to Susan.
I need to go back and watch all of this. It was so loud in the room that I didn't actually hear the commentary. I saw like the facial expressions though, so I definitely had a feel for it. Jeff Carr, I need to go back and listen to him because apparently he said awesome things.
Jeff Carr unloaded on that part on his party.
Hero. What a guy.
Jeff Carr unloaded. And I hear Andrea Mason had some pretty stern words on CTV in Halifax, but I didn't watch the CTV. Did you watch that, Shawn?
No, I didn't. That's something I'd like to go see.
Agreed. But Jeff and Andrea split up the media duties on behalf of the progressive conservative folks. But yeah, Jeff on CBC just unloaded, basically said that, Blaine should be ashamed of himself, needs to apologize for the campaign he ran against Miss Susan Holt, like very professional, very respectful of Susan. I will say, like, out of all the commentators on those, Jeff certainly had the most partisan piece of the equation. Amanda Wildman for the Greens was on there making comments. I forget who the lady was for the Liberals.
Nicole Pico, I think.
That's right. There we go. Nicole, that's right. Yes, I know Nicole. Of course I knew those. Anyway, little momentary lapse. But the other one that's worth mentioning next door, Ted Fleming. That's the end of an era. That's the end of a generational era.
Wow. That was a huge win by Alison. And again, I drive through this riding every day. It's right next to Quispamsis where I live. And the number of Ted Fleming signs on properties was, 10-1 Ted to Alison. Easily 10-1.
Yeah.
It was insane. And then to see all of this support come out of seemingly nowhere if you're going by signs. And Ted has had that riding since... I forget what we said. Was it he ran in the by-election? Oh, geez. We talked about it before, but he's had that riding for almost 10 years now, at least.
Yeah, a decade or so, yeah.
Yeah, so...
But his father was politically active, and...
His grandfather was the former premier, yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. And his father had run to carry on the family legacy, but was unsuccessful. And I think Ted again had a good career. He served for 10 years. He served in very big portfolios. As we said when we went through these ridings, I don't think he's the kind of guy you'd like to have a beer with, really. But he's kind of I think we said, and I still think he's emblematic of male white privilege in the world. He's a guy that's always had a lot, I think, given to him, or he's never had to work very hard for it, or he certainly started ahead of some other folks that
silver spoon.
And I think he took advantage of that and had a long, nice career. He'll go back to his businesses and he'll be a successful businessman for the rest of his career until he retires in luxury. So there's nothing to feel bad for Ted. Ted will be fine.
Absolutely. And Alison's going to be there. Alison's a good business perspective. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave her the ONB profile, the Office of New Brunswick economic development piece.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Alison. I think she is, she was one of the first women CEOs of a in the cable world. So she ran Fundy Cable way back in the 90s. And her and I've had many a chat about that and just, what it was like to deal with the men of the time. And I think she's got a lot of good experience in working across many different sectors and is a lawyer. Like, it's just wild, her career. So to see her.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. It wouldn't be a surprise either to see her as the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Or justice, even. I'll be excited to see where Susan.
She might be. You're right. Alison Townsend may be Susan Holt's most versatile, capable, MLA. Like, as far as cabinet ministers, that might be the hardest one to place, because you're right. She has like some pretty unique experiences and qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's a bit of a dark horse. I don't think people saw her as one of the David Hickeys who kind of stand out in a crowd, so to I mean, literally in David's case, but sort of you might say like the headline candidates of the party. You might not think of Alison that way, but she is probably one of the most versatile and capable people in that party, and I think she'll get a chance to show what she can do.
She'll be a minister for sure.
Well, there's a lot. I was going to talk about that. There's a lot of chatter about who's going to be in cabinet now, obviously, and this is probably
when there's so many to choose from, right? And so many of them are so qualified in different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of question on Twitter as to who would they put into cabinet, and I was sort of thinking there is all those talented ministers who have or MLAs rather, who have they're not a part of the freshman class. So would we see those folks be, the front line, the more experienced ministers like Francine Laundrie and Isabelle Thériault and Robert Gauvin? Those are the folks who have been there before, been there for a while. You're going to probably want to put those people in the biggest cabinet positions. And then, Attorney General, you want a lawyer there. And so there's a few to choose from in the party now. So Alison would be one of them. But I was sort of thinking when that discussion was going on Twitter that you'll probably want to let those people who are just there for the first time get their feet wet a little bit, and probably not put them right into cabinet. But I don't know.
You got a majority. I agree. You got a majority government. Put people who have had any experience in as a backbench MLA in the former administration, or as a current, or as a cabinet minister if you go back far enough. Put people in strategic positions and then do a cabinet shuffle after 2 years. That's how I would play that, right? And try to get some of those performers, those not newcomers, but like you say, the rookies, give them 2 years as a backbencher, get them sort of passionate about an issue, get them sort of vying for some positions, and then, read the room in 2 years and see how the public is responding to you. You got a majority government, you haven't got to worry about it. I agree with you. I think that's the play.
I think they'll probably want to shore up Quispamsis and or Rothesay before the next election to try and keep those seats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with Aaron Kennedy as the former, city manager, you've got somebody there who can articulate the Department of Environment and Local Government. So you've got Adele there. You've got Alison Townsend. She's very versatile. You're going to give her one of three profiles. So that makes sense to me. I mean, I think we're going to go to the next one here. I think we're all going to agree John Dornan's going to be the Minister of Health.
Well, is he though? Because he's another freshman, and he's certainly capable, right? But it's his first time out. Is he going to?
Yeah, but I feel like that's a position where
portfolio.
You're right. It is the biggest portfolio, but it's the portfolio that needs the biggest change.
And it's that Horizon experience. Like, you're dealing with such a huge entity in Vitality and Horizon, and anybody who has experience with that specifically, like he does, to me would seem like a natural, despite not having the legislative experience of,
Yeah, because there's one thing that I noticed, Joe, when you were at the panel, the Medical Society panel in St. John with Dr. Dornan, he certainly understands that the bureaucracy around Horizon Health, and he certainly didn't demonize doctors, he didn't demonize nurses, but he certainly had some tough love words for administrators. And I would just, this is the area of you need the biggest change. If there's an area where you're going to take a risk on a rookie, I think it's this one. And I personally, that's who I would pick, but I don't know. Bat around some thoughts.
I agree with everything you said. I think he will definitely play a big part in the transformation of primary care that Susan Holt's been talking about. Again, there are people who have been, like Rob McKee, for example, has been the health critic, so he knows that portfolio really well, I think.
Good point. Yep.
And he could always tag in John and they could work as a team, but put Rob on the front line and let Dornan back him up. I don't know. I'd be interesting to see what they choose because, again, it's such a complicated portfolio and John does know it really well, but at the same time, he's a freshman and he's kind of a soft-spoken guy. Is he going to withstand the withering attacks in the legislature when the first thing goes wrong and the health minister's really on the spot for the first time in question period? Is John ready for that? I don't know.
It's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. One to watch. Okay, we're running out of time. Let's we gotta go, Joe. We gotta spend some time, just a few minutes on your riding. And I know we don't want to.
I know you guys gotta do St. John at some point. We gotta do Riverview, Albert.
Oh yes, Sherry. Hold on.
Let's go there right now.
They're Albert-Riverview.
There we go. Okay, this person who's now in a lot of trouble right out of the gate. Teri Wilson. Over to you, Teri.
Where do I even start? I'm so disappointed, right? Like just the behavior that I'm seeing, and a lot of it's online. I mean, it's screenshots. Of course, we had her slip up with, Truth and Reconciliation, which she still has yet to apologize for. Sherry, we all do stupid things. Can we just apologize and learn something from it? That's what I would like to see. And then recently she was in the comments of Ross Wetmore's post. And there was actually a comment like, okay, we elected you, but can you please stop embarrassing us now? Like you're embarrassing yourself and you're embarrassing us. And I don't know if she just needs a vacation.
Now so let's just back up, make sure our listeners know what the incident is here. But, Sherry did carry this handily. Like there wasn't a lot of rebuke to the Conservative Party here in Albert-Riverview. This is not one of those, hey, saved by the green split ridings like we have seen. But right out of the gate, there is articles once again being written about Sherry Wilson and her comments on the comparisons between Indigenous, issues as well as parents' rights. Like, and
the last time we ignored parental rights, we, had children stolen from them. I'm like, that's not even a comparison. I do want to add, though, I did just find out that the Salisbury High School, they did a mock election. And Green and Liberal were tied for first.
Okay.
So just saying, these guys will be voters next time around, and we'll see how that goes.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, Cherry is, when somebody's really upset and they just start going off online and you're like cringing for them, it's like, just take some time away.
That's the best word, Shawn. The best word right there is just cringe. Like you are in this position, you are a professional. Yes, it's frustrating and, people are idiots online. I get it. It's very easy to just get, swooped up in that.
Yeah.
But when you're holding a profile like that, 24-hour rule, walk away, cool your head, or you will embarrass yourself and there will be screenshots for life.
Absolutely.
Which there is.
Yes, media.
Let's go in real quick. Obviously, we saw John Dornan one-handedly, David Hickey one-handedly. No incumbent in these ridings, right? Like these, I don't want to make too much of these wins, and not because I want to take from anybody or undermine anybody, but I just to say there's no incumbent in these ridings. And in an anti-Higgs sort of moment, the Progressive Conservative candidates had a ridiculous mountain to climb. Obviously, Glenn Savoy kept alive by Jerry Irish. Jerry Irish running as the Green. You could even say, actually, that the New Democrats, Josh Floyd, or even the People's Alliance candidate, Tanya Graham, any of them kept David Alston from winning this. And I know some people were pulling for David.
Tanya was very sweet, actually. It was funny, like we did like you were saying earlier, the NB Medical Society panel, and we had the PA folks agreeing with all these green statements we were having, and we're like, they don't seem like the old PA. Like they they had a lot more like anti-corporation, like very much about taxing the rich, things like that. I don't think that they're this. And I heard Richard Desaulniers on there on CBC being like, I don't know what's going on with Higgs and his far right nonsense. Like, not a direct quote. But it just seems like they've gone in a different direction that is actually more.
Yeah, it's almost like Austin was the one dragging them into this weird zone. And, now they're a bit different party now that he's not there. But yeah, Glenn Savoy's back just by the skin of his teeth. There is a recount going on there, I understand. And I don't expect we're going to see a difference. But that is one of those ridings where the presence of any of these other parties, the Greens get the bad rep for ruining it for the Liberals. But hey, like I've said, if the Liberals can't put candidates in front of people that are going to inspire and mute these, very, especially in this case, you had the New Democrats, People's Alliance, and Libertarian Party, any of which, if they hadn't have been there, would have amounted to an Alston win. Most likely, maybe they wouldn't have showed up. I can't see the Libertarian Party or the People's Alliance voting for the Liberals, but the NDP or the Greens, that would have translated most likely, but who knows? And then, of course, we'll go over to, St. John had an interesting experience. Joe, this is your riding. You had Kimmy Costain. We've talked about Kimmy on this show before. They're questionable TikToks. You've run before for the Greens. Jane Ryan has never run for the NDP, was there. Libertarians there. This is like the only all-female ticket in the province.
Yes, it was. No, this was, it's one of these things where I do think that I got a really nice note from some folks just about, a lot about this election was voting Higgs out, which we've talked about. So the folks that did show up to vote for, us, Teri, were voting for something, which is kind of a nice way to put it, I guess. And so I'm not disappointed. I'm disappointed, but not disappointed. I think this was not the election for me, for many reasons, right? So it's one of these things where I'm super glad it's somebody in there that has a very deep knowledge about, civic things to bring to Fredericton. So it's not like the end of the world. Like, I think it would have been really frustrating to see Kim win, where there's just absolutely no base level of knowledge about what St. John needs. So I think Kate does bring that to the table.
Did you hear a lot about Kim? I'm just curious, like, because I don't live in St. John, like, and I know her TikToks and whatever, and we all have our opinions. Personally, I thought they were fine. I just didn't like the hypocrisy that if it was a Liberal candidate that was doing that, they would have lost their mind. Yeah. Right. But was that anything people talked about at the door?
No.
Interesting.
No, not really. Like, she's a lovely human being. Like, she really is super personable and friendly and bubbly and lovely. So, that was more so, I think, like, don't speak ill of her. People sort of had a visceral reaction to anyone speaking about her TikToks, honestly. So I do think that she got a lot of benefit of the doubt because she is really quite a personable person. Like,
she worked hard in the riding. Everybody did. I mean, Joe, you had to take 2 weeks off because you had a baby. Like, it's hard to make up in a 4-week election campaign to make up that. You were out far in advance of Kate last year, but the Green movement in St. John truly fell apart, and it's a shame to see. I won't belabor all the details of it, but me having run in Harbor, us having really, Joe, you doubled the vote last time on the west side. We made some inroads on the east side. I beat the Liberal candidate uptown in Harbor. It fell apart. We could not translate the party's position on certain things. We couldn't translate the candidate selection. There was the lack of readiness on some of the candidates. And so it didn't mount, right? It's hard in a city. If you don't have sort of equal readiness by all the candidates, you're really punished by the electorate, right? Because you drive around the city and you're like, oh, well, there's a green over east, but, or, you know, on this side of the city, but there's not even any signs up for this other candidate over here. And so that, whereas in a rural area, it's different. You have such a big area. People are used to not seeing signs in many areas and getting them up slow. It's just a different game. If you don't
That's a really interesting comparison. Like I never thought of that, because even when I was running municipally, we didn't even do signs. You just go to Tim Hortons, talk to the guys in the corner, and everybody knows. But like when you're doing provincial, like my riding, I mean, you saw my riding on the map, like it's huge. Right? So like physically speaking, it's a big space. I'd have to drive from mostly Sussex to Petitcodiac and then kind of like the outlying areas. But your space geographically was much smaller, but the amount of people you had
density was crazy. Like some of these neighborhoods, you know, have 500-600 people in one stop, right? So 100%. And we're, you know, not to take any shade, but there's a lot of parts of Sussex-Three Rivers in this big riding, as well as, you know, Butternut Valley, Maple Hills, and these others.
Rural one.
These ones, some of these ones don't have anybody living in these areas. Like it's just empty space, right? But the way the elections in New Brunswick works. Anyway, any other comments before we move on? We got to talk about Fredericton before we.
Just one more thing about Kim. She was the only PC MLA to show up at the St. John Pride Parade was running in the election. So we'll give her credit for that. I was surprised to see her, and I was glad that she did show up to give her support on behalf of her entire party, apparently.
Yeah, you know, you can't undermine it. Like they were able to keep 2,700 votes there. It's a resting conservative riding. It's been that way for 20 years mostly, right? Abel LeBlanc interrupted it for a little bit, but it has been conservative more than, you know, many other places in the area. But real quick, on our way to Fredericton, I got to say something about Mark Rouleau. Mark Rouleau, listener of the pod, commenter of the pod, amazing first-time candidate. 20% of the vote, no question about it. It's the reasons the Liberals didn't win this riding. Mark kept them at bay, gave the people a third option, an articulated option, ran a really hard-nosed campaign. Kathy Baucus won pretty handily. Like, you know, Mark and Troy together would have just barely beat Kathy. So, you know, real big surprise there for
same
Kathy.
Percentage as Tammy, though. So it's, you know, you let less than half the people voted for you. I hope that factors into the decisions that you make. Yeah.
I mean, it would be good for democracy if we had people who talked about it that way, to say, look, you know, my party only got 45% of your mandate, so I'm only going to give 45% of my party its support, right? Like, I mean, anyway, it's crazy, but that would be amazing.
We got to wrap it up.
We don't have to wrap it up. Rogers will cut us off at an hour. People can come listen to the pod. We can go until 1 hour and 10 at the very most. That's our longest pod we've ever had. I'm not expecting we'll go that long. But Rogers, they have the hour, and they know that we go long. And sometimes, apparently, they do allow. So Rogers will air our entire episode on their YouTube, regardless of the length. But on Cable 10, we will get cut off at the hour or close to.
So goodbye, everyone, if you've made it.
Yes. Sorry, Rogers.
Bed is past your bedtime.
Rogers 10, yes.
On YouTube.
Yes, that's right. Check us on YouTube. Okay, Fredericton. Shawn, over to you. What do we want to talk about in Fredericton?
So I think we have to talk about Fredericton North. That was probably the biggest surprise. Luke Randall, former Green candidate, current Liberal candidate, going up against the Minister of Social Development, Jill Green, one of Blaine Higgs's most capable ministers. We did see people like Bill Hogan survive the call, but Jill Green did not, and Luke took it. And I believe one of the only openly LGBTQ MLAs right now.
Yep.
Rudy was the first. That was what I read today.
I don't know. Well, maybe the first openly. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Obviously. Yes. I'm sure there's only 100% chance that there was a queer.
A closeted queer before. Yeah.
Maybe a premier. Maybe a former premier.
Yes.
Well, I've heard, you know, who is it? Richard Hatfield had stories told about him. not to defame anybody, but come on, guys, the statistics are just not on your side.
In any case, big win for Luke Randall.
Yes. And
kudos to him. And I think Jill just got caught up in the red wave.
Yeah.
I agree. And, you know, Anthea put up a good fight. Obviously, Luke was able to win 30% of the vote there last time as a Green. Looks like he was able to keep all of his supporters for the Green Party and translate it right over to the Liberal Party and keep what they had. So I think they ran Steve Horseman here last time. And they got about 21% of the vote. So,
yeah, poor Steve Horseman got stomped in Oromocto. He knew it was going to happen. People who were talking to him said he was getting no support at the door from the military voters who were very much anti-Trudeau and carried that over onto him.
Mary Wilson winning that, you know, handily.
Absolutely. And then David, kudos to David. David was very successful in his riding.
Yes, we gotta say kudos to David and Megan, right? Like, you know, here we skipped over Megan and we shouldn't have, but you know, Megan getting 50% of the vote, it wasn't even close. John Higham outspent Megan on Meta. It had me worried because I thought this was going to be the election for social media sort of engagement and it paying off. It doesn't seem to have been that way. I mean, Faytine certainly spent more than anybody else as far as candidates goes. Megan wasn't even on here and walked away with 50%. This may be the safest Green seat in the province now, but David had the hardest path to victory. His riding was redrawn, and we'll zoom in here and take a peek, and still getting almost 50%. You got to say that's just as safe.
But that's an interesting split, though.
You're right.
Like you've got they're all very strong. Like there's no, I guess there's no People's Alliance or Libertarian or anything like that. But just,
that's right.
Yeah, it's an interesting. Yeah,
everybody's over 20%. Everybody's getting their money back that they spent on the election. So you're right. And you know, I think the more I think about this outcome here, you know, we saved the Green Party did save the furniture. You know, there's a loss of a seat. We didn't get the breakthroughs that we were hoping for. 6 second place finishes, but there is it's not like BC, right? BC, we were able to see the Greens now are in this really intense position to hold the balance of power, and the Liberals don't need the Greens to pass legislation or any of that. So. Any other ridings we want to run to here? I mean, there wasn't really a lot of upsets, although I will say, sorry to interrupt, Shawn, just before I pass it over to you. The Main Street polling was giving Fredericton a blue runaway, right? As much, those seat projection counts were really off. And I know Main Street caught the trend of the increasing Liberal support, but it's important to note, folks, if you're listening, I know Jacques Poitras wants to tell you online that the polls didn't get it wrong, but they didn't get it right. Right? They may have caught the trend, but there is an important thing we've talked about on this, and I'm going to be the nerd on polls. There's an important thing, and in past podcasts, Shawn, you've brought the Angus Reid sort of readout. You've brought the popularity pieces of Blaine Higgs versus other premiers. Those issues, when we poll people on issues and we say, how do you feel like your province is doing on healthcare? How do you feel like it's doing on education? How do you feel it's on this? Those are leading indicators. How do you feel about your premier? If those are in the ditch, those are leading indicators. Those tell you that people are looking for alternatives. When you see polls, those are trailing indicators. And this election really pointed that out because so many polls had the Liberals and the PCs neck and neck, and we're not showing even close to a major majority landslide for the Liberals, but that's what we got. And I think it's because if we were to go back, Shawn, and listen to that podcast where you first brought sort of the readout of that Angus Reid poll on multiple issues and the Premier's performance, I think you had everything you needed in the basket right there to make a call about what the outcome of the next election was going to be.
Yeah, there's nothing that changed the course of the trajectory of those polls. People didn't see anything that they thought there was going to be a transformational change around affordability or healthcare. Blaine Higgs failed to make that argument. Mm-hmm. But we should mention the first female premier in New Brunswick's history,
yes.
Susan Holt.
Sorry, yes.
There was a lot of chatter about her riding with that. People said Nicole Carlin was ahead. People said Simon Ouellette was going to take her down. She got more votes than all three of those candidates combined in that riding. So extremely strong support for Susan. Definitely a mandate, and has set her on a trajectory to make history in New Brunswick.
And there's some real vibes around Susan now. There's a lot of the federal Liberals are really pulling on those heartstrings about this. The Liberals are really holding Susan up right now, federally, nationally, provincially, as their WAP canoe. Like we saw such a positive response to WAP canoe when he formed government in as the first Indigenous premier in the country's history for the NDP in Manitoba. We're seeing some similar honeymoon phase here. And like you say, Shawn, it's duly warranted.
Yeah, and her first announcement already this week, she's going to adopt the Child and Youth Advocate's recommendations on Policy 713, a 97-page report that Kelly Lamrock spent a lot of time perfecting. It made it copy and paste ready for Higgs and Hogan, and they completely ignored it. And her first action to is embrace it. And as much as parental rights and Policy 713 was a big issue, the reaction I've seen to that so far is pretty mild. People said, yeah, okay. Yeah, you won the election. The election was clearly a referendum on that question. She won. It's a moderate version of the policy. Some are saying we should just go back to the original, but this is a moderate path, and people are satisfied with it. She knows that, and she's moved already on it on day one. So good for her. Kudos. And I know that's something our family really appreciates.
Absolutely. It's good to see her move so swiftly as well. And it's exciting to see our first woman premier. I'm excited that she'll get this work done, and that's what I've seen of many women leaders is they kind of go in and have to clean up after some horridness, which she is going to have to do. There's this famous story of this woman who was the CEO of Pepsi after this bunch of terrible quarters, and she came in and did it all really well. And I think that's what Susan has ahead of her. She has a mountain to climb of 6 years of austerity, and I'm excited to see how she fares, and we'll be here every week to talk about it. Absolutely.
Any final thoughts? Any final thoughts, Teri, before we can go around the circle more time? I don't care if we're over an hour. It's the audio version can go as long as we say it can.
Well, the overall results I'm pretty happy with. And I know we had a conversation off camera that I'm actually optimistic. I think there will be some changes. I know my focus moving forward, as a candidate in waiting is I'm going to be pushing for, fixes to our education system. But I also am very hopeful that if anyone can introduce some kind of electoral reform, I think Susan could do it. I feel like she's already wearing that title of, the first woman premier, which is great. But imagine if she was the first woman premier and the one to introduce rank ballots or proportional representation, because the Greens had about 15% of the vote, which should have been about 7 seats, and we had 2. So I think we really need to talk about this, put it out there, push her on that, because if she truly believes in having everyone's voices heard, if she wants people to get out and vote, we've seen the apathy, we've seen all of that, and an easy fix would be even ranked ballots, just anything so that people feel like their vote when they vote for something is actually going towards that, and it's not wasted, it's not split, it's counted in a different way.
Yep.
Yeah, she's proportional representation, as you know, that's a big question. I know at the policy convention, it was the Liberals were split on it. Some liked it, some didn't like it, and
well, if they don't like it, it's because they know there'll be no more majorities. With proportional representation, there'll be like no more majorities.
I think if David had the balance of power, that's something he could have pushed. Mm-hmm. Now, with the strong mandate, since it was such a red wave, will that be as possible now? I don't know.
I agree. Justin Trudeau was on the Nate Erskine-Smith podcast on Commons talking about this, and he says that's what he really regrets. So there is seemingly a liberal brand, I guess, or a liberal disposition toward proportional ranked ballot, whatever form of increasing the democratic institution that we have and decreasing that deficit. That's what he said he regretted the most, is that he handled that wrong. He handled it wrong, and he regrets not doing it. And he sounded so fatalist about it on that pod, stating, there's no way back now, and now that we've done it this way. And I'm like, no, there's always a way back. You're right, Shawn. It's not something the two main parties are ever going to do unless they're forced to. The places where it has happened, like the UK, like New Zealand, like in places like other democracies, Westminster-style democracies, it's because third parties broke through, shattered the ceiling, became an important player, and got it done. I hope you're right, though, Teri, because elections would be far more, I guess, elevated if we could actually have conversations about the quality of candidates, their ideas, their experiences, and say, you can think of it just on merit alone. You don't have to worry about the split. You don't have to have that sort of bearing down on you.
And voter turnout, right? Like, I think that would drastically increase. But what was it? It was 66% last time. I think it was around the same this time. Did we see more voters?
Oh,
because I did run into people at the door who were like, no, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't matter.
We did see a voter turnout increase, but I don't think it was by anything substantial. Unless I'm missing something. Shawn, do you have something?
I don't have that at my fingertips. No.
We did gain 100,000 people or something. So.
Yeah, we did grow a lot of people.
That's 100%.
True. We'll get back to you on that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn, final thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, Susan Holt now has, and I think we've said it, has a big job ahead of her. Now that the campaign's over, there's a new government coming in. They're a talented group. She really has a star team with her. She has a big majority, but she also has a humongous job. Healthcare is in crisis. The teachers are saying that the schools are, just aren't working the way they need to right now. Social development, there's poverty, there's affordability crises. So, and Joanna, you mentioned the years of austerity we've just gone through. So she's got a humongous job ahead of her. Mm-hmm. Now it's a real test of her leadership. Can she pull that team together and put them to work in a way to get the results for New Brunswickers? I think that's going to be something for us to watch and push for. I think now is the time that if people want transformational change, to push the government for it.
Agreed. Yeah, it would be great to see, an incredible, movement and say, I guess my ideal would be, I'm not naive. You can't transform everything in one mandate, but to stand up and say, here are two areas where we are going to just push and swing for the stands, right? We're gonna push the envelope on these issues, and there's a number of them that it could be, right? We could have a transformative makeover on healthcare. The one, obviously, I'm on this podcast, advocating for all the time is housing, because, currently in its current form, as much as a rent cap is good, we can't expect to solve our housing crisis by just adopting a rent cap and the model of Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is still in a housing crisis for a reason. And despite the fact they have better rental protections and a rent cap and some better policies around protections, it doesn't mean that they've solved this commodification of housing. And, and that will be my own, internal pitch. But there, it would be amazing to see a Liberal government step up and say, you know what, we're not just going to do a little better. We're going to go a lot further. And anyway, who knows?
I think Beatrice is telling us it's over.
It's time to, yeah.
It's time.
Longest podcast ever. Thank you all. Thank you, Teri. Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you.
Welcome back,
Joe.
Yes.
I like this group.
Yes.
Me too.
Pretty cool.
The caucus, I love it. That's for the poster. The caucus responds. It's a good debrief after this epic election. So glad it's over. Now we get to be excited for St. John's by-election, December 9th. We have to replace the city councillor. So there's lots of buzz around town.
So does Sam Johnson.
Sam's got to be replaced too. Who wants to run. Right. So it's like very exciting. We'll see who all shows up to join us on council.
There we go. All right. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
You're watching Rogers TV.
Thank you.